Here we are. Welcome to another week of Retropower Uncut. Hope everybody's doing okay, and we're going to start with an engine. We've got the 289 V8 for the Mustang project. That's come from DNA Auto Engineering in Essex, I believe. No, in Kent, sorry. That's come from DNA Auto Engineering. It looks like they've done a pretty nice job. I know it's been run up. That's come looking great. So we've just been getting the ancillary parts together for that and getting everything. Adam's just been going through a big list of bits we need and working out what we might have missing and all those sort of things, so that we can get that ready to go into the car as soon as the car comes round to the assembly shop, which it's progressing towards. We'll see that in a bit. So yeah, that's all looking good and ready to go. Further on Mustang mechanicals, Adam's also been going through sort of working out the plan of action in terms of all the major mechanical parts. One of which was the axle. Rich has stripped the axle that was on the car down. It's a 7 3/4 inch axle from one of the lower spec models. It's completely worn out. The bearings were shot in it. There was no preload at all on that. If you could literally just spin the pinion flange in it, it sort of slowed down gradually. It's completely worn out. Crown wheel was worn, pinion worn, all bearings needed. It's on the small drum brakes. Basically, stepping back from it and reviewing the situation with the axle, it made a lot more sense to just replace it. So spoke to Steve at Hauser Racing, and he sorted out a 9-inch complete new axle for the car, 9-inch diff. So yeah, that's great. That's over to Hauser Racing on that one. They'll sort us out the axle and all the relevant parts for converting that and upgrading that. So that's going on as well in the background now. So we're sort of gradually piecing together the mechanical jigsaw in advance of the car being ready to receive those bits. Yeah, I knew there was something else. I was looking at my list. The fasteners, we've been sorting through all the relevant fasteners. Again, there's bound to be some we've missed. I know there'll be plenty of YouTube comments on things we've missed, but we're basically going through a big list of fasteners, sorting them all out. Any fasteners that are being reused or anywhere the plating process isn't up to the standard we expect. Certainly underside fasteners and heavily weather exposed fasteners, we will want to zinc nickel plate. So all of those, either new or some used fasteners, but mainly new, where the plating process was either non-existent or not good enough, they've all been bee-blasted now, collated, laid out, photographed, and they all go off to the platers. They'll all be zinc nickel plated. So they're a bit more durable in British weather. When we get those back, then that'll be another little notch on the step up the ladder of getting ready for the reassembly process. So that's about where we're at on Mustang mechanicals. That's a good place to start on that. Right, moving on. I'm going to make Jamie swing all the way around now to Gordon's car, just to be really difficult. We're happy with that now. All testing done. Carl's been out in it quite a bit, done quite a few miles in it, completely happy. The summary was, which I can't remember if he may have mentioned last week, but his summary was he didn't want to get out of it, and that's the best result really of a test drive. Is no niggles, nothing coming off and nothing rattling and nothing, all the usual ticks in all the right boxes mechanically, but the key being he's smiling and didn't want to get out of the car, which is what we were aiming for. I think the car was already a pretty smile-creating car, but now it's just ironed out the few little creases that were left. So completely happy with that. That's going down to Gordon's tomorrow. Cal and I are going down with that tomorrow down to deliver that back to Gordon personally, and we'll see how he gets on. So yeah, that's really happy with that. I think Jamie's actually we actually got the car cameraed up as well, so Cal could get a little bit of footage out in that as well. So you'll hopefully there'll be a few nice noises on that footage. I haven't actually seen it myself yet, so that'll be good. But yeah, you might get a bit of an idea of what it's like to be in. One good thing about where we are is that the roads directly surrounding the farm are really good from a road testing point of view. They're very bad. They're very bad roads. So particularly this one, straight out from our drive, it's got some real horrible undulations, off-camber sections. If you go around this bend here, it drops away to the left and there's just rolling drop-offs to the left constantly. It's a horrible corner. But
strong points. One of the things that we have done in this most recent round of revisions is actually I've put a smaller master cylinder on the clutch. The clutch really is beautifully light now, and likewise the steering, with the power steering that's now on it. It is very easy to drive. Interesting on this build, and also a bit of a challenge on it, is trying to strike the right balance in terms of the amount of mechanical noise. I mean, of course, with the Mach 1 Escort shell as the envelope you're working with, you're never going to be able to get the exterior noise down to a level of a more modern car, simply because it's just blasting through the wind with things like gutters and the design of even things like the grille. They're all nothing like a modern car, so you're always going to get some external wind noise, and the way it passes over the rubber seals, you tend to find that's all flush on a more modern car. And there's a degree of mechanical noise as well, and that's been one of the things we've been trying to get the right balance on. You're never going to get it absolutely silent without packing the thing full of heavy sound deadening. But of course you do also want it not to feel like a standard Mach 1 Escort in terms of the noise. The huge numbers you get of 500, 600, 700, 800 horsepower, just mind-blowing numbers. But in a car like this, it's only 250 horsepower, but so light. Somebody else again, you realise that the general pace of traffic on small lanes like this, it feels like I could get out and walk now after that little blip up there.
Most of the things that have been going on Utah won't be visible on the car itself right now. Carl's been working on getting door seals fitted. He mentioned it last week about things that didn't fit. We've revised all those, but obviously there's a process in terms of mitering, resealing ends, and bonding the seals on. We're using the taped on system there for fitting the seals. That's all being done. So Carl's been on with that. Other jobs that have been done on that, there were some modifications to the final batch of parts going for chrome, which I think we mentioned before. We used the Mark 1 Jaguar grille. That needs modifying. It also needed a little bit of repair. It was very good, but it needed a little bit of repair. Some of the studs, the threads had become damaged on them. A couple of the studs had sheared off. And the original badge holes in the top of the grille needed filling in. So Stu's been busy on that. He's turned up a couple of little brass plugs, press fit brass plugs, pressed them into the top of the grille and peened them in, and then silver soldered over those. He's then desoldered the damaged studs and silver soldered on new studs. Got that all ready now. I think that's basically ready. I think one of the little slats needs a slight tap up and repair, but other than that, that's ready to go to the chromers. The other thing that Stu was working on was the rear trim strips that go down the quarters on the car, the chrome trim, the finisher strips that go down, you can see the holes in the quarters where they fit. Obviously, because we've modified the quarters, the original trims don't fit. Well, they do fit, but they just end in the middle of the quarter panel and don't look correct. So to finish the back end of those trims, we decided fairly early on that we were going to make some little brass sort of bullet noses to go into the end of those trims. But we've not had a chance to do that yet, and that was one of the jobs that kept getting put on the back burner. Well, that needed doing to get these final parts off of chrome. So Stu's worked out a little method for doing that. He initially turned a sort of piece of round brass bar with the right radius, or approximately the right diameter to get the right radius for the outside of the trim, turned a taper onto that on the lathe roughly, finished that by hand with a file to bullet nose that taper. And then we grooved out a wooden block, sat it in the wooden block, clamped it in with some screws and flat bits of steel just to clamp it into the wood, and then fed the whole lot through the bandsaw to split it down the centre to make it into 2 pieces. Then fettled that some more so it would fettled a step into it so it would slide into the chrome trim. Silver soldered that in and then filed it all to finish, and that's created a nice tapered end on those trims, so they can now also go for chrome. I used silver soldered on the last stud as well, actually, to fasten that onto the car where that last bullet nose, that brass bullet nose goes. So that's all ready to go now, and he's going to they can now go off for chrome plating with everything else for the last batch. Just check what else on what I've missed. Yes, the centre console. James has now finished all the CAD work for the centre console. There's quite a few pieces that make that up. There's a number of sections, which I think we've mentioned before, but it's quite a complicated arrangement because there's a lot of things going into that centre console and it all needs to look rather smart. So that's all done now. He's 3D printed the bits that are going to be machined from billet, and they all look good. I think a couple of those bits are actually staying as 3D printed parts. I can't remember now. The top plate is all drawn. We've got a plan in place for making the top plate that's then got to be prepped, painted, and then hydro dipped with the wood grain effect. So we'll be working on that towards the end of this week. Today's Wednesday. We'll be working on that towards the end of the week. We've got a plan in place for making that. So that's all basically, the design work's all now done on that, and that's quite a major part of that job. That's all fixed and sorted now, so good progress there. And then the door pulls, the front sort of door armrests that you pull to shut the door, they were designed a little while ago. I drew those up on CAD. But we've had a bit of a queue on the 3D printer. Plus, we actually broke the 3D printer last week, so we fixed the 3D printer on Monday, and that's then been printing catch-up mode. But that's currently printing the second of the 2 door pulls for the front doors in this. And then we've got to machine the bits and make the retainers that they'll slide onto 2 lugs that are bolted onto the door, and then there's some hidden screws that then hold those on to the lugs. So that can then all be finished. And I think that pretty much says where we're at on Utah this week. As I say, it's mainly backgroundy little bits as usual, but nonetheless they absorb time quite surprisingly. So right, moving on, we'll wander through to next door. I'll have a little drink. So I've been a bit short on coffee this afternoon, and losing my voice a bit as well today because it's been incredibly noisy through here. We've had 4 people going with grinders this afternoon, so it's plus paint booth running, so it's been quite noisy. So I've been shouting a lot. So wandering on, we'll wander our way all the way through here. Bit of carnage at the moment, but onto the Jensen. We've been a divided approach on this. I've done a little bit of work on working out how we're going to install a heater. It's quite a complicated process. There'll be more on that next week because we're still at the very early stages of redesigning the bulkhead to accept the heater module. We're pretty certain we're going to stick with the vintage air unit that we've got. There are certain things we want, the heater, certain functions we need from the heater, and there's a vintage air unit that provides us with those functions. We want a temperature mix flap to mix between heat and cooling. rather than just using the water valve to control the heat, because there's a bit of a delay in the action of the water valve, and it just means that the climate control, we're going to run climate control on this car, and the climate control response is a little bit sluggish if you use that system, whereas if you use a mix flap to control the mixing of hot and cold air, as well as a water valve to stop the heat being dumped into the heater box to start with, it means that you get a much faster response for your climate control. So that's something we want. And then we want stepper motor controlled flaps for the air feeds to the face vents, feet vents, and the demist system. All of that's provided quite neatly by the Vintage Air unit. The downside is the Vintage Air unit is very big. It's kind of ideal in American cars, less ideal in something with a cockpit as small as the CV8. Whilst the CV8 is not a tiny car, the cockpit space is quite small, particularly in the areas where you need to put a heater. So there's a bit of redesign going on there at the moment. And then Tom has been carrying on slogging through basically all the metalwork that goes on the sides of a Jensen. He finished both the body sides, I think we said that last week. He started on the doors. He's basically rebuilt the first door, save for one little patch on top, which there was a question on that one, because the second door, which he's working on now, is much more rotten than the first. I think we're going to put a new top rail into this door, and he's thinking we might actually just put a new top rail in that one as well. I'll go through that with him probably on Friday, but we're weighing up. We might just put a top rail in that one as well. But he's on with the door repairs. That's all looking really good. They're surprisingly loosely dimensioned, these doors, and trying to work out, once you've de-skinned them, where everything should be. When they were put together by Jensen, they're actually quite a neat design, considering what they had to hand and what little resources they were using to make all these parts. They actually did, a pretty good job. The difficulty is that some of the fit and finish around the edges was a little bit lacking, and therefore it's not a particularly precision operation to work out where things should have finished and where the correct positions for things, because they were sort of bashed into place with a hammer and welded up when they were made originally. So we've been doing a bit of archaeology trying to work out exactly where corners and exactly where parts should be. But we're getting there now, so by the end of the week we will have 2 completely rebuilt doors, 2 completely rebuilt body sides, but for one section that we're actually waiting for. I'm hopefully going to be getting that from Ron, so that we can replace the upper B post, because it's quite a complicated shape. Making the complicated shape isn't a problem. The issue is that if you don't know what the bit that's rusted away, if you don't know what shape that bit should have been, it's quite difficult to make, because you're just doing it from imagination. And I believe Ron has some of those parts, so we're hoping to get those from Ron so we can use some new B posts that he has already, or upper B posts that he already has made. So that's why we've stopped progress on the body sides just for the moment, until we sort out whether we're going to make them or use some B post sections from Ron. So that's where we're at with all that lot. Other than that, yeah, I think that sums up where we're at with Jensen. That's everything on that. So the other significant progress is body shop. The Mustang is painted. The base coat and lacquer is now done on the body shell. The Gaz has just been nibbing some bits and bobs out on it, but yeah, the base coat and lacquer is done on the body shell. This was done in I've forgotten the colour.
High impact blue.
Ford Impact Blue, I think it is. It's done with a Max Mayer water-based base coat and a Novol Spectra lacquer. We're very happy with that. As I say, there's some bits to nib out on it, but we're just going through those in between doing other jobs. He's now painted the doors and an assortment of other panels, and I think he's got one more batch to put through the booth, and then the whole lot should be painted. So yeah, we're looking forward to seeing all that coming together, and then the long slog of getting that all flatted and polished will be the next round of operations on that, once the lacquer's fully hardened off. But yeah, that's looking great. That's a good step forward. And so yeah, so that's where we're at with Mustang. Next week you should be able to see the full suite of panels and car all in final paint. So it'll be a major step forward on the Mustang project. And talking of steps forward on projects, there's another project waiting in the wings, which if we have a little wander outside, we can do a reveal. So we wander out here. we have a new little a new starter this week. This arrived yesterday, and it's a Toyota Land Cruiser FJ40, which will be one of the new one of our new projects into the workshop. We're really looking forward to this one. It's actually a really good basis for a project. Unusually for us, I think, I might eat my words after blasting, but there's very little metalwork to do on this. It looks completely original metal-wise. The outside isn't original paint-wise, it's been painted, but to be honest, underneath that, the paintwork is largely original. I mean, it's pretty good. I'll do a little bonnet open just to give you a sweep around there, but it's pretty damn good. There's not a lot of rot or anything hiding. It's original paint in the engine bay. There's no significant rot on any of the panel work. Chassis all looks good. Yeah, it really is a pretty stunning example. So we're looking forward to doing some upgrades on this that hopefully, all being well, and first impressions allowing, don't just start with a huge marathon of rust repair. So yeah, this should be quite special. There's engine upgrades planned. We've not finalised on those yet. There's ongoing discussions with our customer on that one as to exactly what the engine upgrades will be. Likely to be a 5 or 6 cylinder, still not decided on petrol or diesel yet, but watch this space. So we've got upgrades there, quite a lot of cosmetic upgrades and quite a lot of modernisation, make it a more user-friendly vehicle so that just lighter steer, power steering, so it's lighter steering, just 5-speed gearbox instead of the 4-speed, not a 4-cylinder engine. It's a bit bone shaky at the moment. It feels a little bit of its time with the 4-cylinder engine in it. But it is an absolutely lovely thing, and it's in remarkably good condition. It's really nice to be having a project that's a starting point like this. It's a UK car? I don't think so. No, I don't actually know. I mean, it's a UK plate on it, so I don't know whether he's re-registered it. So I don't actually know whether it was a UK car or not originally. Cal would probably know, but I don't actually know. But yeah, just a lovely thing. We're all quite taken with this one. I'm certainly looking forward to it because I've got a bit of an enthusiasm for 4x4s and off-roaders myself. So it's quite nice to see something different. I'm kind of used to Land Rovers and Range Rovers, and less used to Land Cruisers. So it'll be nice to crack on with and watch this space for the design inspirations on it, and a few. I don't know if we're going to have some renderings or not on this one. We'll see. I don't know what Cal's got in the pipeline there, but certainly I know there's a lot of design ideas floating around, and we'll see which ones make it through to production, so to speak. But yeah, watch this space on the initial strip down for this, and we'll see if we find any horrors lurking. I don't think we will, but you'll be able to see it all unveiled as it comes apart. So I think on that note, like and subscribe, and we shall see you all in a week's time.